The owner of one of the largest Call of Duty cheat providers reached out to help provide some clarity to the questions that we all want answers to. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My username is...
Did Caps Lock recently interview Call of Duty's largest cheat provider, or was it all fake? A few people seem to think so based off its presentation, using an AI voice not revealing the source, only alluding to it being the owner and sole developer of the largest Call of Duty cheat provider. So I asked him on a video that begins right now. What's up, what's good, YouTube? Hope all is well and welcome back to the channel. I'm Haba, and recently friend of mine and fellow YouTuber Caps Lock dropped another banger, interviewing Call of Duty's largest cheat provider, and spoiler alert, it was real. And the proof that it was 100% real is verifiable through Phantom Overlay's own website. And yes, the interview was from the sole owner and operator of Phantom Overlay Cheats. And this interview delves into why cheats like the ones this developer provides go undetected for so long, and other commonly asked questions about Ricochet AntiCHE and how cheat providers are consistently able to bypass it. While someone such as myself completely understood and found the interview absolutely fascinating, and I also have an interview coming up with this very provider, and that video will be out soon. But first I wanted to sit down with Caps Lock and go through his video on one of my live streams. I wanted to go through the portions that were going to help you as a viewer understand the basics of exactly what is and, well, quite frankly, what isn't taking place, namely with Ricochet and the ability for cheaters and cheat providers to remain in the game. But the questions I have for Phantom Overlay's developer have a lot more to do with what you can expect for the future of cheats within Call of Duty and Warzone. And spoiler alert, it's not good. To be honest with you guys, it's extremely sad. And also, hey guys, Caps is giving away a really expensive, awesome looking aim controller. Watch the end of the video for more details on that. And if you enjoy this video, make sure you like it, subscribe, and then turn on the notification bell so YouTube never lets you miss any more content like this or when we go live.
So why are cheats able to go undetected for so long?
A lot of people think that Ricochet can simply buy undetected cheats and detect them, but it isn't that easy. I make unique bypasses and focus on security so that it's hard for the anti-cheat team to reverse engineer our unique bypasses and see how they function. It is incredibly hard to reverse engineer most cheat software, and even if they get the job done, it wouldn't necessarily be clear to the anti-cheat team how they could implement a reliable detection without false positives.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think if they actually did have a dedicated team on Ricochet, that they could use the method that you're talking about here to get rid of some of the, let's say, lesser skilled providers? Or do you think in the long term it'd be a waste of time and money?
I think they could do that. And like the thing is, they could not only do that, but the problem is, I think that's how they're doing some of the current detections. But the issue is like they're not doing them often enough, which is one thing he kind of goes on to talk about later in the interview, is that they are doing that, but they're not doing it enough. They're not targeting the largest providers, and they're not targeting the right providers often enough.
I mean, do you think that's because of like the return, like we talk about the return on investment not being there, that, you know, that they're just not losing enough people from the game to make that jump and to make a dedicated team to go after stuff like that?
Yeah, I just don't think they're financially motivated enough to dedicate resources to actually stopping cheating in their game, because, like, I mean, they're still selling store packs. There's still a lot of players still playing the game. So, like, they're probably looking at it as, like, why would we invest all this extra time, money, and staff towards stopping the cheating problem when we know that a large part of the player base doesn't even have to deal with it? Because, like, you know, I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point to know that, like, because of SBMM, and like, I'm not trying to trigger anybody with this, you know, because I respect people of all skill levels here. The fact of the matter is like, you're not really going to run into a lot of cheaters unless you're higher skill level. And there's nothing wrong with being lower skill level at all. Most of
that's true, but we've been seeing in the comments that more people of the lower skill brackets and the casual skill brackets, if you will, are seeing them now, like more than they have.
Well, opposite ends of the spectrum, like people that are like on the very, very, very low end of that spectrum of the skill bracket, they're also going to see cheaters that are on brand new accounts, right?
Yeah.
So they are also going to see cheating. But like the other, you know, 90% of the player base just doesn't deal with them. So they're like, oh, why would we invest money when it's only a very small, you know, portion of the player base being affected.
And from a
by
business standpoint, that makes perfect sense. I know they say they've been developing and this and that on the back end for a while, but personally, I don't believe them.
I don't either, and it's just the problem still being is that, like, even though I don't think they're financially motivated to do so, it's the issue is going to continue to compound and get worse. And like I think we're going to reach a point of seeing cheating like it was pre-Ricochet. And like I think a lot of people also don't realize is that cheating has already reached those levels. You're just not seeing it visually as much because people are hiding it more. So like you're not seeing it as much because there's so many tutorials now on how to hide your cheats. You know, you do see rage hackers, it's just not nearly as often.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that we can credit Ricochet for, I think, is just the elimination of the rage hacker. And I think that their thinking going in on that was simply just, you know, if the problem's not in your face like it is with the rage hackers, which that's what the rage hacker does, they put the problem right in front of your face. There's no denying it. You know, any skill level can tell that's cheating. And they kind of make it impossible to do that with a newer account, you know what I mean? So I think it did, you know, good in regards to getting rid of them, but it didn't change the amount of cheaters. All those guys are doing is just, you know, playing within, you know, what they can, like, you know, not using a super strong aimbot and things of that nature. Not rage hacking, if you will, but I think they're still out there cheating. Most people I know that cheated back then are probably still cheating right now, whether they admit it or not.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Ricochet anti-cheat as good as it should be or as good as it could be?
Ricochet is an extremely bare anti-cheat. Ricochet does not include several critical generic detections for internal and external cheats. Ricochet does not include any detections at all, or even flags, for DMA cheating, or other novel methods of cheating such as computer vision-based cheating. In addition, Ricochet implements targeted detections of popular cheat providers, too rarely for how many popular providers exist for Call of Duty, and Ricochet seems to have poor judgment about which providers to target. Finally, Ricochet does not focus enough on keeping known cheaters off their game. Their hardware bans are easy to get around. They don't hardware ban known cheaters until the cheater has been permanently banned 2 or more times for cheating. Ricochet seems far too focused on their server-side shadow ban system, which is ineffective because it affects legitimate players just as much as it affects closet cheaters, and shadow bans remove after a few days for both closet cheaters and legitimate players.
What is the cause of the Ricochet anti-cheat coming up so short against detecting cheating?
Ricochet seems to lack funding, talent, and freedom. In terms of funding, Activision's investors may not be interested in seeing Activision invest heavily in anti-cheat because anti-cheat doesn't have a clear return on investment. In terms of talent and freedom, Team Ricochet needs more talented individuals with experience, and those individuals need to be free to do what they feel needs to be done to stop cheating.
Is the shadow ban system useful in discouraging cheating?
The shadow ban system is ineffective. Closet cheaters who get reported are shadow banned for a few days, and legitimate players who get reported are shadow banned for a few days.
I think I get their direction, the thinking in this, you know, as far as like, you know, with the trust factor of a new account, obviously, like how are you going to just jump onto Call of Duty today and be good kind of thing, you know what I mean? With very unlikely, you know. But
yeah, and the issue is too, like with that shadow ban system though, is like one thing Call of Duty dramatically underestimated was the fact of how many legitimate players that it would cause to suffer as well, because, you know, I think I speak for a lot of the COD community here when saying like the shadow ban system doesn't work, and a lot of legitimate players have to deal with it more often than they should. And the issue is too, cheaters just aren't affected by the shadow ban system. They're really not. They just, if they get shadow banned, a cheater just hops on for a new account that they have locked and loaded, ready to go, and they cheat on that until they get shadow banned. And they continue to do that with how many ever accounts until they just, you know, are just like, okay, until they've got their playtime in, right? Legitimate players, they have to wait those shadow bans out. So like the system is just entirely flawed. It needs to be removed. And I think for the most part, like Ricochet very, very heavily relies on the shadow ban system. And I think at some point they shifted from trying to detect cheating more or less to letting the shadow ban system do a lot of the heavy lifting. We've seen that in examples on social media where people are talking about being shadow banned. I mean, a lot of people see the shadow ban system. In theory, if implemented correctly, I think that it could be a really good system. I think it could be a really good system if it was implemented right, but it's not implemented right, and it's not paired with the right tools to prevent it from being abused. And let's just be real. I mean, like I said, it's just not effective in stopping cheating whatsoever.
There's 100%. You know what's missing in this whole thing? A review actually taking place, and they realized that they're opening themselves up for criticism, or even worse, legal action, by saying that your account's under review when there was no review taking place. I literally hosted rage hackers on my stream. We sat there and watched them punish kids for hours upon end. They got shadow banned, and then they come out of a shadow ban
system is a timed system.
It's just a
time system. There is no review taking place.
Yeah, and we just go. I mean, like, shadow ban system is incomplete. I'm not even going to say it's ineffective, because we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, and if it was functioning properly, you know, and we might have a different opinion on it. There's no review taking place. If there's a review taking place, then it's a fully functioning system. It's not a fully functioning system. We're literally without the other half of it. It's like we're putting people in jail, but with no due process, no trial, no nothing. It's just like, when do you get out? 7 days? What'd you do? Murder? You know, what about this guy? He jaywalked. I mean, you're both in here for 7 days. Don't complain. Right? That's what I feel like we're dealing with.
It holds a lot of weight too. You know, it's like, I think that is the key problem of why we don't have a better anti-cheat. And he hit the nail on the head. And it really comes down to one thing, and it's money. Without, you know, it just, to them, they don't see the value in it. And that's what really pisses me off, is like, I'm not going to say a number, but I've talked to a few people in this industry, on the cheat side industry. I know realistically what they would be willing to take as a paycheck to swap sides. And I'm sure COD knows that number, because I'm sure they know. They've probably at least spoken to people, or at least some people in those departments have.
Wait, let me ask you without a question.
So angry to know that we as the community are not worth that amount of money.
Well, what would you say to people that have the argument that if this guy takes it, say the biggest cheat providers go work for Ricochet, wouldn't somebody just be there to take their place?
They would, but they would have people that know how to combat it, because it's always going to be a push and pull. It's always going to be a fight between people cheating and people coding cheats. You know, it's always going to be a fight back and forth. There's going to be times where the anti-cheat's ahead, and there's going to be times where the cheaters are ahead. The people that are coding cheats are ahead, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
And those times will come and go, but it'll be a lot different than it is now, because let's just keep it 100 here. Since Verdansk, there hasn't been a time we've been ahead. And if anything, we're falling more behind every single day.
Feels like it.
Because, I mean, you heard what he said. It's one of the most incomplete anti-cheats that he's ever seen. It's just incomplete. And it comes down to finances. To them, they just don't want to spend the money. It all comes down to that.
Well, they're an indie dev studio. It's not like they're making, tons of money. Anyways, let's continue.
Are there cheats available on console? And if so, how popular are they going to become?
It's hard to get access to the game's memory on console because consoles are locked down. However, there are 4 ways to cheat on console that I know of. 1, if a console player has someone on their team who is on PC, that PC player could use cheat software to read the game's memory and find information like enemy locations in the match. With this information, the PC cheater can share via web browser, a radar, with their console friend. 2, the console cheater can use a hardware device that mimics controller input to help the cheater with things like recoil. 3, the cheater can capture their gameplay and use a computer vision object detection model to identify enemies on the screen. After enemies on the screen are identified, the cheater could use either a hardware or mechanical method to move their aim to the detected enemies and handle recoil, which accomplishes aimbot and recoil control. Triggerbot could also be accomplished, which is when your gun automatically shoots anytime an enemy is in your crosshair. 4, the cheater can capture network traffic, decrypt it, and figure out what network traffic they can use to identify player locations, which can be drawn on a radar on a separate device. All forms of console cheating are going to become very popular in the near future. Cheaters do not want to be limited only to PC.
My personal opinion about the console cheats, I think it is something that is very much so going to be part of the future of Call of Duty cheats. but I think the fastest developing technology within what's going to allow for console cheats is going to be all of the research and development done for like self-driving cars and things of that nature, because that is the vast majority of the research and development that's going to be able to be basically repackaged for like cheats within a console under, you know, computer vision. So as soon as you start to see here advancements in self-driving vehicles and things of that AI nature, just know that that's also in a development in being able to cheat on console. And the whole sharing of the 2D radar thing through a browser source is 100% a thing right now. It's being used right now.
It needs time, just like Hoppa just said. It's not fully advanced yet. It's very buggy. It's very gimmicky right now still, but that is going to change. That is going to change as technology advances with this. It's going to change, and it's going to become an issue. And at the end of the day, without a working anti-cheat, it's just not going to be detected. But the thing is, there are still ways to detect those things on console too. It's just there's nothing in place now. And it's like the key with this stuff is getting ahead of it before it becomes a problem instead of trying to deal with it after. It's like currently right now, like they would actually have a chance, right? If they wait, it's going to be like pouring a 20-ounce water bottle on a forest fire.
Yeah, that's basically a good analogy of the current state of the anti-cheat. For certain. So, I mean,
a teaspoon of water.
So the move to competitive COD on console right now, viable for a little while?
I think right now it needs to be done fully, like any tournaments being ran currently at this very moment. It's a temporary fix, but it is a good temporary fix. Like any tournaments for Warzone or for Modern Warfare 3, if anybody that tournament hosting is watching this or does see this later, you need to swap everything to console only now. Like at this very moment, it needs to be swapped because the amount of people cheating in competitive right now, it's really bad. What do you feel that Call of Duty should be doing to fix the cheating issue?
First, keep known cheaters off the game by using trusted computing. Modern motherboards have a trusted platform module chip. Call of Duty needs to force their player base to enable their TPM so they can use their players' TPM for identification. The TPM cannot be spoofed, so players would be identifiable at all times without the ability to change their IP or spoof hardware identifiers to get out of their hardware ban. Ricochet also needs to permanently hardware ban any known cheaters after the first offense using the TPM instead of after 2 offenses, which is what they do now. Because even if a cheater replaces their TPM chip or motherboard and uses a spoofer, they would be surprised to still be hardware banned because most spoofers will only spoof identifiers banned for generic hardware bans. Imagine buying new hardware and buying a spoofer to evade a hardware ban only to be hardware banned again. This would make most cheaters give up.
So the chip he was talking about in the question previous to this, it's a chip on your motherboard, basically, trusted computing that allows certain things to boot and not boot, to just keep it very simplistic. And so right now, the anti-cheat doesn't use that when it could, and it would actually stop a lot of cheating. So that was basically to summarize it.
So they attack spoofers a lot, and the TPM would solve all of that. It would be, once you get caught cheating, it's going to cost you $1,000 to get out of the hole. Not only that, to my knowledge, there is no spoofer out there that changes the identifier from your GPU, which a lot of times is the most expensive component of your PC. So banning those two, a combination of those would in my opinion cause a lot of people to not be like, maybe I'll try cheats, and if they do, when you eventually get caught, you're no longer part of the community. You can't be. The barrier to get back in is $1,000. How many people do you think would have decided to cheat if they knew that it potentially could have cost them thousands of dollars?
Oh yeah, a lot of people would definitely they'd be less inclined to want to cheat at that, price barrier. It's like every time you get banned, boom, $1,000. That's a tough pill to swallow even for most people, bro. Even if you're pretty well off, that's still a lot of money to have to spend every time. I'm sure providers would find a way around that pretty quickly. Within a month or two, they would find a workaround.
But every roadblock that they put up is going to be more costly.
Yeah, it's going to be more costly. It's going to take more time. It would still be a temporary solution, right? But it would still be a solution. It's just like it's sad to see like that there's so many little things that they could be doing or that they could have done to help curb the problem, to buy time so they can research more and things of that sort. It's just like, but they're just not taking the resources out to solve the issue. And they have the resources. By all means,
it's worst case scenario. What we talked about, like, what if they don't care? What if it's a lack of willpower to do these things, not a lack of ability? Yeah, that's the worst part about it. It's beginning to feel like they don't respect us as customers at all.
So let's just say worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, it's $1 million contract to hire one of these guys. And $1 million is a lot of money, right? I'm not saying it's not, because it is. But like when you're a $72 billion company, you piss away $1 million in a day, right? What would be, at worst case scenario, what would be $1 million to hire one of these guys on? To have talent to not deal with it. They would actually gain far more than they would lose. I just don't understand how they can't do that math.
Implement several blocks and detections for DMA. DMA cheaters use hardware that masks itself as a legitimate device, like a network card, for example. Ricochet needs to outright block unnecessary devices from being used while the game is running. This would mean that even if a hacker masked their DMA device perfectly as a legitimate device, it would still be blocked.
What he's talking about now is DMA cards. So basically what a DMA card is, it's basically a secondary hardware device that you can put into your PCIe slot on your PC. So the same slot that your graphics card would go into. And basically it reads as another device. Instead of a graphics card, it would read as like a sound card or a Wi-Fi card, right? And it runs the cheats through that so it doesn't detect them. That's basically what a DMA card does. Anyway, what's sad is that can still be detected too, which is, you know, something he's talking about is like, with a proper anti-cheat, they could actually pick those up. Because like at Vanguard, they actually just did a detection on a large DMA provider. And so we know it could be done.
They're not detecting the cheats, but what they're detecting is the firmware, which in layman's terms would be the thing that it's pretending to be. I do want to tell you guys, you got to go watch the rest of this video. This is some of the more things that they elaborate on as far as the current state of cheating in Call of Duty and what's not being done and what should be done. That way, when you go out there and you make these tweets at Activision and other people trying to raise awareness, you know exactly what we need to ask for and advocate for. And here's the cool thing, like I said, aim controllers, a really nice spicy new aim controller.
I will be giving away a fully kitted out controller from Aim Controllers.
So definitely make sure you guys head on over to Caps Lock's YouTube channel. Link will be in the description. Watch his video in the entirety and you will find instructions on how to win a beautiful aim controller just like the one he's presenting right here. If you guys enjoyed this behind the scenes question and answer, leave the video a like. And if you want to see more content just like this or to be notified when I post my interview with the same provider, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel with the notification bells on. Because trust me, the questions I've asked Ziebler, the owner of Phantom Overlay, questions such as, was Ricochet designed with protection of larger streamers in mind? Or has any Activision employee ever leaked anything that's given a cheat provider an upper hand? And some scary news about DMA and console cheats. Questions mostly related to the future of cheating within Call of Duty. Like I said, spoiler alert, it's gonna get really bad rather soon, unless our complaints are heard and taken absolutely serious by Call of Duty themselves. Catch you on the next one.